The richest woman on earth never founded a company. She has never run one. She has never sat in a chief executive's chair. Forbes says she is worth $134 billion. The 10 women on this list control more than $600 billion between them. One question carried all the way to number 1. How many of them actually built it? Number 10. Marilyn Simons, $32.5 billion. Her fortune comes from Renaissance Technologies, the most secretive investment firm in the world. Her late husband, Jim Simons, was a mathematician, a genuine one. He broke Soviet codes for American intelligence during the Cold War until he was fired for publicly opposing the Vietnam War. He chaired the mathematics department at Stony Brook University. There is a piece of theoretical physics with his name on it. Then, in 1978, he decided markets could be beaten with equations, at a time when almost every economist alive said they could not. He was right. Renaissance's flagship Medallion Fund reportedly averaged returns of around 66% a year, before fees, for 3 decades. Nothing else in the history of finance comes close. Not Buffett, not anyone. And in 1993, the fund closed its doors to outside money entirely. Only employees may invest. The greatest money machine ever built is a private club. Jim died in 2024. Marilyn, who holds a doctorate in economics herself, presides over the fortune and the Simons Foundation, which they ran from her spare bedroom in the early years, and which has since poured billions into mathematics, autism research, and basic science. So did she build it? Partly. She built the giving. The machine that made the money was her husband's. Hold that question. It gets harder as we climb, one piece of context before the next rung, because it frames everything above it. There are 3,428 billionaires on Earth this year. Fewer than 1 in 7 are women. The higher you climb, the rarer they get, which makes the 2 names waiting at the top of this ladder even stranger. Number 9. Abigail Johnson, $33.2 billion. This one is complicated in the opposite direction. Abigail Johnson inherited her stake in Fidelity Investments, the firm her grandfather Edward Johnson founded in Boston in 1946, 3rd generation. On paper, a classic heiress, except she actually runs it. Chairman and chief executive since 2014. She is reported to hold roughly a quarter of the company. Fidelity manages and administers trillions of dollars, sits inside the retirement accounts of tens of millions of Americans, and under her leadership, it pushed into cryptocurrency years before most rivals dared. And she did not parachute into the corner office. She worked the phones in customer service as a student. She spent years as an analyst and fund manager after Harvard Business School. 3 decades of climbing inside a building with her own name on the deed. That is the puzzle of Abigail Johnson. The stake was a gift, the job was not. I went looking for another example of a woman running an inherited financial firm at this scale anywhere on Earth, at any point in history. I could not find one. Is running a fortune the same as building one? Number 8. Miriam Adelson, $37.5 billion. She is a medical doctor. That is the detail everyone forgets. Born in Tel Aviv in 1945, Miriam Adelson specialized in addiction medicine, ran drug treatment clinics in 2 countries, and published dozens of research papers. She still describes herself as a physician first. The money comes from Las Vegas Sands, the casino empire built by her late husband Sheldon Adelson, a cab driver's son from Boston who created the Venetian in Las Vegas and then bet the company on Asia. Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, with the ship-shaped deck lying across 3 towers. The Venetian in Macau, one of the largest buildings on the planet. Asia is where the real money lives, and when Sheldon died in 2021, control of it passed to Miriam. She has not sat still. In 2023, the Adelson family bought majority control of the Dallas Mavericks basketball team, in a deal valuing the franchise at around $3.5 billion. She is also one of the largest political donors in America, and she holds the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a doctor who owns casinos and a basketball team. But the empire itself? Inherited. The count so far: 3 women, 3 fortunes built mostly by someone else's hands. Number 7. Savitri Jindal, $39.1 billion. In 2005, a helicopter went down in northern India. On board was O.P. Jindal, a farmer's son who had started with a small pipe and bucket workshop in the 1950s and turned it into one of India's great steel groups. His death left an industrial empire and a widow who had spent her life entirely outside the business, raising 9 children. Savitri Jindal did not sell. The group was divided among her 4 sons: steel, power, cement, infrastructure, and under the family's hands, its combined value has multiplied many times over. JSW Steel alone is now among the largest steelmakers in India. She herself went into politics, serving as a minister in her home state of Haryana. Today she is the richest woman in India, one of only a handful of women among the country's 100-plus billionaires, with a family fortune larger than the entire economies of some small countries. Her role is not spreadsheets, it is matriarch, the center of gravity holding 4 industrial empires in a single orbit. Is that building or inheriting? India's construction boom does not care. Every new bridge, tower and rail line feeds this fortune either way. Number 6. Rafaela Aponte-Diamant, $44.5 billion. Stop here, because this is the one. Remember the question, how many of them actually built it? Here is the clearest yes you will get today. The story begins on a boat, naturally. Gianluigi Aponte was a young Italian ferry captain sailing the Mediterranean. Rafaela was a banker's daughter born in Geneva. She boarded his vessel as a passenger. They married, and in 1970 the couple took a loan of roughly $280,000 and bought a single second-hand cargo ship, 1 vessel. They named the company Mediterranean Shipping Company, which sounded far grander than the reality. Today, MSC is the largest container shipping line on Earth. More than 7.2 million containers of capacity, more than 1/5 of every container moving on every ocean. It is still private, still family-owned, and it now includes MSC Cruises, whose ship interiors Rafaela personally oversaw for years. When you buy almost anything that crossed the sea to reach you, there is a real chance it rode on her ships. The scale is hard to hold in your head, so try this. A single large container ship today can carry 24,000 boxes. MSC operates a fleet of roughly 800 vessels. The company that began with 1 borrowed ship now moves more cargo than entire nations do. She is called the richest self-made woman in the world, and unlike nearly everyone else on this list, the label fits. In late 2025, the couple passed ownership to their children, Diego and Alexa, and the dynasty began its second act, 1 borrowed ship to $44 billion. That is what building looks like. Now watch how the rest of the summit compares. Number 5. Jacqueline Mars, $49.1 billion. M&M's, Snickers, Milky Way. The candy is the famous part. It is not the interesting part. Her grandfather, Frank Mars, learned to hand-dip chocolate in his mother's kitchen after childhood polio left him unable to play outside. He built Mars Incorporated from that kitchen, and his son Forrest turned it into a global machine. Today it is one of the largest private companies in America, with annual revenue close to $50 billion. The best story in the vault belongs to her father, Forrest. During the Spanish Civil War, he reportedly saw soldiers eating chocolate pellets coated in a hard sugar shell so they would not melt in the heat. He came home with the idea, and in 1941, it went on sale as M&M's. A candy invented for a battlefield became one of the best-selling sweets in history. And yet, the quiet engine of this fortune is not chocolate anymore. It is pets, pedigree, Whiskers, Royal Canin. In 2017, Mars paid over $9 billion for VCA and its network of veterinary hospitals. Pet care now drives more of the business than candy bars do. Your dog is worth more to this family than your sweet tooth. Jacqueline worked inside the company for nearly 20 years and sat on the board. But the fortune was 3 generations deep before she touched it. The family runs on famous secrecy. No stock ticker, almost no interviews. Just one of the great compounding machines on Earth, ticking away behind a candy wrapper. Number 4. Iris Fontbona, $52.6 billion, the richest woman in Latin America. Her fortune is copper. Her late husband, Andronico Luksic, was the son of a Croatian immigrant to Chile. He started trading metals in the 1950s, and the story Chileans still tell is about his first big sale. He quoted a price for a mining stake in Chilean pesos, and the Japanese buyers paid him the number in dollars, more than 10 times what he had asked. He took the luck and never looked back, building Antofagasta into one of the world's major copper miners, alongside banking and beverage interests across the continent. He died in 2005, and Iris became keeper of the Luxic Empire, which she holds with her sons through the family holding company Quinenco, a web that stretches from Antofagasta's mines to Banco de Chile, one of the country's biggest banks, to the brewery that makes Chile's most popular beer. Here is why this fortune keeps climbing while she stays home in Chile. An electric car needs several times more copper than a petrol one. A data center is a warehouse of copper wire. The greener and more digital the world becomes, the richer this family gets. Demand she never had to create, feeding a mine her husband bought decades ago. And before we enter the top 3, you should know this list has a ghost. MacKenzie Scott is not here. After her divorce from Jeff Bezos, she held Amazon shares that would comfortably place her in the top 5 today. Instead, she has given away more than $19 billion, so fast that she keeps sliding down the rankings on purpose. Thousands of charities, often with no conditions attached. She is the only person in this story actively trying to get off the list. Everyone still on it is climbing. And the last 3 live in a different league entirely. Number 3, Julia Koch, $81.2 billion. Look at the jump, $52 billion to $81 billion in one step. The gaps at the top of this ladder are wider than entire fortunes further down. Julia Flesher grew up on a farm in Iowa. She moved to New York and worked as a fashion assistant, fitting dresses. In 1996, she married David Koch, the MIT-trained engineer who had once run for Vice President of the United States and who owned about 42% of Koch Industries, one of the largest private companies in the country. Fuels, chemicals, fertilizers, the paper towels in your kitchen. Revenue estimated north of $100 billion a year, and not one share of it traded on any exchange. The stake itself has a violent history. In 1983, Charles and David bought out their own 2 brothers after a family war that split the Kochs for decades. The price then was around $1.1 billion. The same ownership is now worth many, many times that. Fortunes this size are rarely built politely. David died in 2019. Julia and her 3 children inherited the stake, and its estimated value has roughly doubled since. She did not build the machine. She does not run the machine. The machine simply runs, and it is one of the finest machines ever made. From a fitting room in Manhattan to the 3rd richest woman alive, the ladder is almost done, and the last 2 steps are the steepest of all. Number 2, Francoise Bettencourt Meyers, $100 billion. In 1909, a French chemist named Eugène Schueller mixed one of the first commercial hair dyes in his Paris apartment. That formula became L'Oreal, the largest beauty company in the world. Lancôme, Maybelline, Garnier, Kiehl's, Schueller's granddaughter Francoise became the first woman in history to be worth $100 billion. She is not what you expect. She is a writer who published scholarly volumes on Greek mythology and the Bible, and she practices piano for hours a day. She also survived the ugliest inheritance scandal in modern French history, the Bettencourt affair, in which her elderly mother Liliane gave nearly €1 billion in gifts to a society photographer. Francoise went to court against her own mother to protect the fortune. France watched every twist for the better part of a decade. She won, and when Liliane died in 2017, the stake passed intact. Over the past year alone, it grew by more than $18 billion, roughly $50 million a day, on lipstick and shampoo. And here is the strange honor I promised in the last video. Her single inherited stake is so enormous that when the big rich lists rank the world's wealthiest families, they leave the Bettencourts off entirely because a fortune held by one heir does not qualify as a family fortune. She broke the format. For the first time ever, 2 women stand inside the $100 billion club, which has only 20 members on the entire planet. You are about to meet the other one, and if this climb has earned it, subscribe now. Because next on this channel, I am counting down the 10 richest people alive, and the man at number 1 just made financial history. Back to the summit. Number 1. Alice Walton, $134 billion. The answer to the riddle at the start. The richest woman on earth never founded a company and never ran one. Her father was Sam Walton, who opened a discount store in Bentonville, Arkansas in 1962 and called it Walmart. It is now the largest company on earth by revenue, over $700 billion last fiscal year, with more than 2 million employees, the largest private workforce in the world, and roughly 250 million customer visits every single week. Alice is 76 now, and she chose a different life at every fork. Her two brothers, Rob and Jim, took board seats and stewardship of the company. She never did. First it was horses. She spent years breeding and raising champions on a Texas ranch. Then it was art. And this is where she rewrote the rules. In 2005, she paid a reported $35 million for a single 19th-century American painting. Then she built Crystal Bridges, a world-class museum of American art, not in New York, but in Bentonville, her hometown of under 60,000 people, and made admission free forever. In 2025, a medical school carrying her name welcomed its first students there, tuition covered. Meanwhile, the fortune grows entirely on its own. In the past 12 months, her wealth rose by roughly $33 billion as Walmart's shares climbed. I did the arithmetic. That is around $90 million a day, nearly $4 million an hour, earned while she was hanging paintings and building a medical school. Analysts estimate that every single dollar of movement in Walmart's share price shifts her net worth by close to $900 million. So, the final count on the question, we carried up the whole ladder. 10 women, 1 true builder, Rafaela and her borrowed ship. 1 operator, Abigail Johnson, running an engine she was handed. And 7 guardians of machines built by fathers, husbands, and grandfathers. Machines so good, they no longer need a builder at all. That is the uncomfortable truth this countdown keeps pointing at. The biggest fortunes on the list belong to the women furthest from the businesses. The money stopped needing the family a long time ago. If that idea hooks you the way it hooks me, subscribe, because the next countdown is the 10 richest people alive right now, a list where Bill Gates no longer cracks the top 15 and where the man at the top just became the first trillionaire in human history. You will want to see the number that did it.